The deeper and deeper I go, I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds.
Happy Holy Day, Moors. Welcome to House of Reawakening Minds. House of Reawakening Minds exists to provide for the exploration and practice of spirituality in an enlightened community dedicated to honoring the myriad of sacred pathways to the universal creator. We are a holistic center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self-discovery, and Moorish science, an awakening experience for all ages. Tonight, I am pleased to present to you our National Grand Sheik Taj Tarik Bey as he presents America, American, Du Sanguinis versus Du Soleil. But before he begins, please be sure to like, share, and if you have not already done so, subscribe to our channel. Now, let's receive our National Grand Sheik Taj Tarik Bey.
Islam, Shalom, Assalamu alaikum, Vadi Makum. Dr. G, as we talked about earlier this week, with people, many people wanting clarity. And it's not that we haven't, none of this stuff is new. However, we know that there's a lot of people, in other political jurisdictions, other nation states, who call you on a regular basis, and getting clear on their right of blood. And the people here are learning about their right of blood. And one of the interesting things, not surprising, but as you know, that when some of the people who are more well-known celebrities begin to learn about the right of blood, etc., which is jus sanguinis, they've been under attack. Some of them, which you already know, we don't have to name them, but you already know who they are. It's not new among the celebrities. Many of them are conscious and have been conscious. I can, count at least immediately, if I choose to name them, at least 19 to 20, celebrities, that I've talked to over the few years, actors and people in the music industry, and people in other areas of sports, who know, but you don't hear them necessarily talking publicly because they'll be attacked the same way they've attacked Kanye, and they've been cognate like for decades, that includes many people who would be surprised who some of these people are already cognate and adeptus in this area of the right of blood. Now, for the sake of the listeners, because we have limited time, and you already know that we're limited, politically limited in what we can say or how we can say things direct. So we'll try to give people some points of reference where they can, continue to do their research, because many of the people who come on the House of Reawakening Mind themselves are scholars, and then they share with us, and we share with them, which all of our people should be doing. And so we'll make some references for them to do some research. And it's very important for our people to be grounded in the Naturalization Act operating on the land here, to put their perspectives in order. And so when you're talking jus sanguinis and jus soli, you're talking about two different categories of what you will call the people's relationship to the land. And then you have the structure of political societies or civilization. As an example, you might say in Asiatic African verbal culture, House of Dawood, and people will say the House of David or the House of Ruth. This means the estate, and the estate would be both lands, hereditaments, liberties, rights, and then you have a subcategory of operations where you have people from one house or one estate that travels to another estate when you're dealing with the aggregate land and the rights to the land and the rights to the resources. This is where your distinctions come in the political arena of nationhood. Or just like when you look in ancient Africa, you look in, say, the Vedas, Bhagavad Gita, look in the Septuaginta, Quran, Bible, some of the contemporary that people call ancient books. They're not ancient to us because our history goes so far beyond them. But the deal of it is that people need to have a clearer understanding of what is known as nationhood in the political arena, or what you call political civil orders. And you will deal with both the issues of jurisdiction in the aggregate or the organic land, and then you deal with territorial jurisdictions that deal with rulership or rules of operation.
So when you speak of the aggregate, would that be, I know for Rod was on
physical.
Rod was also on Tuesday, and I know aggregate means when you combine. Would that be an example of that?
That means that too. Yeah.
What would an example of that be when they were saying that a lot of the tribes or the peoples of the land traveled to fight the Geechee Gullah wars? That would be an example of an
operation. That would be called an operation of the original people or indigenous original people in what you would call a protection of the right of blood to the aggregate land. All right.
Okay.
So the aggregate would also mean, the collective, but also, or you would also refer to it as the organic land. Okay. And so when we're talking the organic land, we will deal with what you call longitude and latitude star chart or metrology measurements or grid line relative to Midgard for distinction for both navigation and also for both super devere operations that you would know as surveying. And so your territorial, terra means earth or the land, or the organic operations would be your lines, distinctions, then your breakdown of the airship. Like when you talk about the ancient super devere of the dividing of the land between Ham and Cush. So it doesn't go into what you would call detailed super devere clarity, but it gives you a knowledge that the land masses or the land of Hikupta or Egypt, etc., was divided between, they'll say, by general hereditaments, dividing of the land between Ham and Cush. So you got the same blood, and Ham would represent the father, and Cush would represent the son or the offspring. But you're talking about dynasties, etc. And so the dividing or the super severe dividing of the land between Ham and Cush would make reference to the great travel across the river, and that would be the great, the Red River, also referred to as the Nile.
So again, now may I interject? So when you say that, now are you speaking of this in terms of biblical depiction or what we know to have happened on over here?
How it's referred to in the biblical format, even though when you go into your more ancient records, many of them which have been hidden, in some of your records with the Bhagavad Gita and Book of the Dead, although refer to the opening of the mouth by the day, etc., refer to the Book of the Dead. Ancient manuscript, you're dealing with in more contemporary time related to that dividing of the land between Ham and Cush.
Are we talking about in a Maxim?
Yes, and so
and not what we were taught.
Yes, not what we were taught. Now, and this is why even that it's a controversy, not so much as of late, because people around the planet are more cognizant of their right of blood than they were, say, 20 years ago, which has created a lot of the controversy that has caused the hybrid occupiers to do more and more censoring, if you understand. So not unlike where you see, like in the Circle 7 Quran, like chapter 47, where Noble Ali brings back to the heirs of the Maghreb or Maxim of the West. They'll call it Egypt of the West, and the awareness of their right of blood to the land. And so you'll see the super devere operations in chapter 47. You'll see in the Bible talking about dividing of the land between Ham and Cush. As a matter of fact, give me the Quran, and so we can look at that so that people will get an idea, a better idea of what we're making reference to with the super devere. And I might have one over here too, but yeah, thank you. So we're dealing with Circle 7 Quran.
It's a small one.
Is that? It's compact. Can you see it?
You kind of, sort of. Yeah, now you can see it. Yeah.
All right. So essentially, you're talking about surveying, basically. When you talk about super devere, ancient work, you're talking about what we call surveying. And like, say, for instance, if you take the property here as an example, and not unlike what we dealt with at 602, when the back portion of the longitude, latitude of that property had been unjustly and artificially cut off from you for how many years?
17.
17 years?
Yeah.
And until we looked at the layout, when we were doing work, then you find that it extended further. Mm-hmm. Now, the line on a larger scale, dealing with what you call larger territories, you're talking about what is referred to among the ancient Phoenici, who are the first, or by the records, the first people of the Western Hemisphere, or known as the Maghreb or Morocco, the most extreme west. That would be referred to the Hamites moving with Hittites, etc., to the Western Hemisphere and crossing the water or the Red River, also known as the Nile, went before then over the Atlantis, particularly, which was where the Nile come out to, and before the great cocoa plate shift. And so the cocoa plate shift is when it's along that terra, along where you see Yucatan area, that plate, and it still shifts. But the great shift, they'll refer to it in modern archaeology as the continental drift. They will refer to it as continental drift. That's the cocoa plate shift. And so the cocoa plate shift is when the Atlantis, sunk, is really the land separating, and the river became what is now the Atlantic Ocean. But when the super severe took place, that what you see as the Atlantic Ocean was actually a river. And so Australia, and what you see, the land of flowers, or the Florida area, and the Florida area, and the strips that you see along the coast of North Carolina, South Carolina, that whole area there, that would be connected to what is now known as Africa, or Kemet. This is why geologists and archaeologists acknowledge that the soil, the sand, etc., of Florida area and Morocco, Tunis, Algiers area is absolutely
Same.
identical. Absolutely identical. You could take soil from there, put it together, and it would have the same consistency, mineral, etc. Because they used to be connected. And like we see, Australia used to be connected up to where Madagascar is now, on that side of what we know as Africa today.
So there's a lot, what you're saying is there is a lot of former landmass that are now underwater, submerged
Exactly.
underwater.
They'll call it the sinking of Pan, Mu, Atlantis, etc. And even when they're talking about a lot of the modern air travel, they would avoid what they would call the Bermuda Triangle, because of the energy that's still being projected, and every once in a while there would be like portals open up, and they would lose ships and planes.
So is that energy from like maybe the type of
still active?
Yeah, the type of civilizations that existed and what they were operating with, even though it's underwater now, it still has the same magnetic pull, the same energetic strength.
Because actually everything here is magnetic, and contrary to the physics that are taught to the masses, the reality of quantum physics includes the reality that everything here is magnetic, even water. Like say, for instance, people will look at, say you take a magnet and you put it on metals, and people think that like certain metals, like gold, would not respond to a magnet the way that, say, iron would. Iron would have a greater pull. Gold would have a lesser pull. Silver would have a lesser pull. Aluminum would have a lesser pull. Yet, in physics, the fact of the matter is that all things are magnetic, even water. This is like, say, for instance, like if you take your finger and you're going to the surface of water, right? And if you pay close attention, you put your fingertip closer to the water, and you'll see the water actually rise to your finger, because the body's magnetic and everything else is magnetic. Now, the knowledge of that, dealing with sound and vibration, resonance, etc., that is a part of physics that is not taught to the masses, because those who have been corruptedly ruling don't want the masses to know that everything is magnetic and therefore everything vibrates, etc., even when it appears to be standing still. And due to the fact that magnetism is a part of all things in life, and the life form is not only what we look at from the organic perspective, but they know that if the masses knew that, the masses would begin to recognize that those who have been ruling them have been tying, or what you call putting a meter on life forces that are just there and free. This is why they know that they're upset as people are becoming conscious, or they don't want them to get in their God energy, is what you would call the capacity to invoke, call upon, and pour out the energies. And this is why they spend so much time trying to snuff out the oxygen from activating, the pineal gland, because you would begin to recognize that the priesthood has tied general life forces that are just part of the sovereignty of divine life itself to a meter. As an example, water, uh, electricity. And this is again why they don't want people to know that the magnetic Earth itself is the source of electricity, and it's not necessarily necessary to produce it by burning fossil fuels or anything else like that. But this is part of the operations, particularly since the Germanic tribes took over Africa, that they want to control the resources and the access to the ley lines on the earth, and also control a lot of the juntas here, or pyramids here, and this is why they spent so many years, particularly in the mid and late 1800s, covering up the mounds, because many of the mounds are actually electrical generators, like, and so they would tell the people that the pyramids or juntas are burial tombs, so that the people don't know that the technology, or the quantum technology, is ancient. It's not new at all. And of course, that would liberate the people relative to energy, because energy is the source of economy itself. So the economy, or running the energy for civilization, is rooted in electricity, and so they don't want people to know that. Um, this is another reason why they've always had problems when they're going in the Bermuda Triangle area, and of course where the land of flowers is, and where you see Dominica, Borican, etc. That area, going up even up to Nippon, that triangular area still emits energy from juntas from, you would say, multiple thousands of years ago, uh, prior to the superdevere and the cocoa plate shift. Uh, and this is also why when you see many of the objects that are on the bottom of the oceans, they would always pretend that they don't know what they are, and they would call some things which are clearly have geometric shapes to them, or what you'll call flat planes and 90-degree angles, etc., as well as what you might see circular cuts or angular cuts or triangular cuts. They would tell the people that these are natural phenomena, when actually a lot of it's old machinery. Not unlike I think they exposed, maybe, I think about 10 years ago, where they were digging coal in the coal mines in Virginia, and they were down so many hundreds of feet, and found old machinery as well as tools embedded in coal that they considered to be million years old. So you already know why it's become necessary from a political perspective for them to set up not only that particular institution, but institutions like it, known as the Smithsonian, in order to cover up the technology. But again, let's go to Egypt, the capital empire of the Dominion of Africa. And this Circle 7 Quran, and this will give you a little knowledge on the superdivere of what they call in the Bible the dividing of the land between Ham and Cush. Chapter 47, divine instruction from the Holy Prophet, the Holy Quran of the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, Circle 7, divinely prepared by the noble Prophet, noble Dwali, by the guiding of his Father God Allah, the great God of the universe, to redeem man from his sinful and fallen stage of humanity back to the highest plane of life with his Father God Allah. Chapter 47, Egypt, the capital empire of the Dominion of Africa. The title itself should be analyzed. 1. The inhabitants of Africa are the descendants of the ancient Canaanites from the land of Canaan. Old man Cush and his family are the first inhabitants of Africa who came from the land of Canaan. His father Ham and his family were second. Then came the word Ethiopia, which means the demarcation line of the dominion of Amexem, the first true and divine name of Africa. The dividing of the land between the Father and the Son. The dominion of Cush, northeast and southeast Africa, and northwest and southwest was his father's dominion of Africa. In later years, many of their brethren from Asia and the Holy Lands joined them. The Moabites from the land of Moab, who received permission from the pharaohs of Egypt to settle and inhabit northwest Africa. They were the founders and are the true possessors of the present Moroccan Empire, with their Canaanite, Hittite, and Amorite brethren who sojourned from the land of Canaan seeking new homes. Their dominions and inhabitation extended from northeast and southwest Africa across the great Atlantis, even unto the present North, South, and Central America, and also Mexico and the Atlantis Islands, before the great earthquake which caused the great Atlantic Ocean. That's from 1 to 7. 8. The river Nile was dredged and made by the ancient pharaohs of Egypt in order to trade with the surrounding kingdoms. Also, the Niger River was dredged by the great pharaoh of Egypt in those ancient days for trade, and it extends eastward from the river Nile westward across the great Atlantic, and was used for trade and transportation. According to all true and divine records of the human race, there is no Negro, black, or colored race attached to the human family, because all the inhabitants of Africa were and are of the human race, descendants of the ancient Canaanite nation from the land of Canaan. And what your ancient forefathers were, you are today without doubt or contradiction. And there is no one who is able to change man from his descent nature of his forefathers unless his power extends beyond the great universal creator, Allah himself. These holy and divine laws are from the Prophet Noble Ali, the founder of the uniting of the Moorish Holy Temple of Science of America. And these laws are to be strictly preserved by the members of all the temples and the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, that they may learn, that they will learn to open their meeting and guide it according to the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Now, and that goes to 13, but so now you go into also the political arena that we're operating with now. And so it gives you the rules on the temples. And then at 17, this would get into the politics. And that is why the nationality of the Moors were taken away from them in 1774. And so then you got to know about the Whigmore Party. See, so all of this information, when you break down this chapter, it will give you reference. And then when you start doing the research and start, like say, if you go to Washington, District of Columbia, where they transferred the government in like in 1890 area, you'll begin to recognize a lot of the artifacts, and you'll begin to recognize the operations of the Whigmore Party and why so much effort was put, later on Naturalization Act, and why they changed it from like 1790 when you do the research on the Naturalization Act, and then you look at 1870, then you look at the Ku Klux Klan oath and operations, and you'll see them writing themselves into the history of the land, claiming to be Americans, which you will see in Webster's dictionary. And so you'll see the just sanguinis, organic right of blood definition in the first part, and then you'll see the political, or what you call the de facto interjection of connotation, where they take the colonial operatives and mark them as Americans.
So let me put that up right here. So where it
Yes.
says American, noun, a native of America, originally.
Reference of the book.
Is that the,
Let me so that the people who are
I've got it
looking
up.
can make reference for themselves. Most of the people that come on, who are scholars, have this, but for those who don't have it, so that we can make sure that they have reference, so they can add it to their libraries.
Noah Webster's 1828 American Dictionary of the English Language.
Yes. Right.
So hopefully I got that right. So a native of America, originally applied to the Aboriginals or copper-colored races found here by the Europeans, but now
then see the but now,
yeah.
That's an interjection of connotation. Now the first sentence is just sanguinis.
Okay.
The second part is just soli. And you're going to read that, but I just want to reference that so that the people are aware of why it's important for the people to know that jurisprudence and history goes together, so they can have a comprehension of the political motive as to why civics is not taught, why etymology is not taught, and why they, with the international convention that they have on education via the General Education Board, etc., why they have practiced, animal husbandry under the guise of education, in order for people not to recognize when they're reading, say, something like that, or even contract, to separate denotation from connotation, and in a political realm relative to, remember what we talked about, nationalization versus naturalization.
Yes.
So if people are examining the political opinions that are written by writers and journalists at North America, with all this confusion that they projected under the guise of racism and colors, which are code systems for caste, so the people wouldn't know that the code systems of nom de guerre created for maintaining a caste has nothing to do with right of blood. That would be just soli. That would be categorized under just soli operations, and just sanguinis would be organic. So just sanguinis is organic to the land, and it is runs along the lines of even when you're analyzing, um, say, contract or political jurisdictions or issues of diversity, as an example, like in Article 3, Section 2, for the judicial platforms, um, and the judicial powers for Article 3. You would have the diversity issue dealing with ambassadors, diplomats, and consuls. And so if one is not aware of the jus sanguinis distinguished from the jus soli, that line would be muddy. And this is why a lot of people do not have a clear comprehension of the arguments which are made by scholars of jurisprudence relative to the 14th Amendment. They would look at all of that as just what you would be calling uh, established, or what you call res judicata law or constitutional principle, and would not make that distinction between what you would call color of law.
Well, here it's up here, just sanguinis, Latin, right of blood.
Right of blood. So that's organic.
Yeah.
See, so the right of blood is organic.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so like the 14th Amendment that they have used, particularly since 1865, to distract as well as to misclassify their Aboriginal people and the indigenous people of the land who have right of blood. So they have right of claim or right of reversion. They have right of estate. Whereas the colonists, hybrid Europeans, who come under unum sanctum operations, or what you call colonial operations, etc., don't have right of blood. You see, so the colonial operations would be constructed in such a manner as to make the claim of right on the land as if they have right of blood. So if someone, like say, people are looking at law cases where people are trying to protect their estates, and then you start going into international law and you're looking at claims of the Aboriginal people, so the people would need to know and have right to know the distinction between what is known as allodial claims, or what you call Aboriginal title, distinguished from what you would call deeds and mortgages.
So jus soli.
Jus soli would be in deeds and mortgages, which would be legislated, right? And not necessarily constitutional, where right of blood supersedes that. So right of blood would be in harmony with what you would call established law, or what is also referred to as stare decisis. And this is why when you look at a lot of cases where the hybrid Europeans have been claiming the land, they would use the doctrine of discovery in order to make the claim, because they have no right of blood, you see. However, the political arena would still deal with what you call rights and privileges. So this is where you have the distinction. So if you're talking in relative to the people of right of blood, you would refer to them as native or nationals. If you were talking to jus soli, this would be legislated, etc. You would be talking generally citizens.
So they call that right of land.
Now, that's when you go into estate. So in order to have right of claim of estate or inherited claim of estate, then you would have to be indeed the bloodline of the ancient Canaanites, Moabites. Now this goes back to, so when you're going back to chapter 47, right? That would be, chapter 47 would be an established reversion of estate or right of claim. And this is where in propria persona would come in an argument relative to controversies of estate. This is why, remember when we were talking just past past week with Brother Sar and Sister Francesca, who was helping, do work over there. And they were asking the question of why trust, just things that we've been discussing over the years. And why did Drew Ali, as an example, do a trust? Why did he make that public? Even though it's called public-private, if you get the point. Now that would be what is called a jus sanguinis right of claim instrument, whereas the deeds and mortgages created by the colonial operatives, particularly since 1913. So when you go and say in the congressional records, as an example, for the United States, and when we tell people over the years to read House Joint Resolution 192 in order to get a clarity to make the distinction between a colorable claim distinguished from a right of blood claim. And so when we tell people to nationalize, we know in the principle of law and right of inheritance, and this is ancient. See this? So now we're talking ancient and modern jurisprudence. This is why we'll often use like Bouvier Dictionary, Law Dictionary, and Black's Law Dictionary, Henry Campbell Black's Law Dictionary of Ancient and Modern Jurisprudence. And then we deal with what you call color law, stare decisis, res judicata, because that aligns with what is known as the common law. Therefore, it supersedes Roman law. It supersedes legislative law. This legislative law and the Roman law would be what you would call classified as jus soli, you see. And so when we often would mention to people for reference in order to get their concepts correct, we reference them to look at the letter from Pope Francis to Obama, civil orders, and we'd also reference the motu proprio of 2013. So when you're aware of the distinction between jus sanguinis and jus soli, just like when people would ask who don't understand the history, would say, well, what does the Constitution for the United States have to do with the Aboriginal people? You see. Now, someone who does not know the distinction between jus soli and jus sanguinis would dismiss it as only applying to the hybrid European. It only applies to them keeping them in check. It doesn't apply to them giving them any right. It makes the distinction of their obligation to the treaties to the people of the land, making distinction between jus sanguinis and jus soli. And now, when you're clear on that, you can analyze, say, controversy. Because remember, what's going on today? What's going on today, particularly here at North America, which logically creates controversy because a lot of people are making claims, right? Right? And then you have the state controversies where they're making claims to the disadvantage of the people of the land. One of the common arguments or controversies that has been constantly going on at America relative to the Aboriginal people has been what they would call the genociding of the people in what is commonly practiced in wherever we're concentrated as gentrification. Like when they did the Trail of Tears, my great grandmama and them. That would be among the Powhatani confederations. That's Powhatani is like a confederation of tribes, right? Of Bantu, Mandinka, Phoenici tribes that they would classify as Indian tribes when they took most of the land of what you call the Virginia area, Carolinas, down to the land of flowers. A lot of this had to do with the Gullah Wars that they made up and called the Seminole Wars. That's the Gullah Wars, or the people fighting back. And of course, they genocided a lot of people, and they ran many of us to the west, etc. Of course, the Alleghenies, etc. And they call that particular part of the Unum Sanctum Wars. They refer to that as the Trail of Tears, right? And so they're making a just soli claim by force of arms to supersede right of blood. You see, so when you know to make the distinction between the nationals or the people of the land, the originals of the land, and the invaders or the peregrinos, also referred to as the pilgrims. So we refer to them as peregrinos. The peregrinos means wandering stranger or the invading stranger. And so that's written in history as pilgrims. Um, and so they are making what you call just soli claims. This is why, like, say, our people, like when we're talking about to make our arguments in the public arena, right? So if you're making your argument in the public arena, coming from our circle of mothers, etc., right, or Gishnawa coming under the tree of peace, and we have the Majlis, whereas the Shakuns, the chieftains and the sheiks of the different territories of the north and the south, and most of that would be Anansi and Powhatani confederations, and Anansi would be called to our north here, just above this area, and that would be called the Iroquois. So they call it Iroquois, and some people say Iroquois, Indians. That was honestly Confederation. And the Powhatani, and that would include the potentates, Matawaka, that you know as Pocahontas, and Wanha. So Wanha is her father, and this he would be one of your major shakuns or sheiks of the Powhatani Confederation. And among the Powhatani Confederation, this is where most of the attacks was when the hybrids did the Trail of Tears. So they're making just soli claim, and by force of arms making it superior to just sanguinis claims. And this has always been our problem. Now, with the Carlos Linnaeus and Blumenbach of phenotype, that was structured in the 1700s to create a cover for the what you call abridgements, the unlawful abridgements, or the superseding of the right of claim, just sanguinis, of the people of the land, i.e., stealing the people of the land's rights. And so when you look at the operations of the old Canaanite temple that Noble Drawley set up in between 1910, solidified in 1913, then you have a political concept of the operations of Woodrow Wilson and the Kaikalos operation of the Kaikalos on Jekyll Island, and them murdering off the Shakuns and the people of the land on Jekyll Island, and building that area where they had the meeting with many of the hybrid members of the Roman Curia, and made up the Federal Reserve, and while stealing our gold, made up the voucher systems for the Sister QV Trust operations that have been operating since 1913, particularly, which are generally known as the Fiat dollars that people use today, and have been trained falsely that is money. And so, for all these, this whole over a century, the masses of the people have been trained under animal husbandry, and actually are in the operative mental that they've been paid or that they have money, and yet it would confuse them how operatively, like, say for instance, like some of the brothers and sisters who are celebrities, who began to find out information on the jus sanguinis area, the right of blood, and start talking about we're the real Canaanites. Now, there's another word that's used to cover up for that. And so this has been operating all around the world. They've been claiming to be us and then trying to murder us out and then keep us unconscious of our right of claim or heirship, jus sanguinis, to both the land and all hereditaments. And so that whole area, it constructs the actual politics that's been operating on the planet actually for the last few hundred years. And if one doesn't know the distinction between the right of blood and what you call legislated under a color of operation claim, which has been operative. This is what's been operative. The jus soli has been operative. The jus sanguinis has been suppressed. So Drali came and gave these people nationality card, which is the public instrument to counter the existing bottomry instruments that are originated under jus soli operations. And so logically, that creates what you call controversy of claim. Now, Article 3, Section 2 clearly makes the distinction of their obligations to protect the rights of those who have right of blood. And so this is where you see in the Constitution for the United States. And do you have that available? Just pull that up, Constitution, Article 3, Section 2, and we'll explain that. And so the nationality card would indicate the diversity aspect of the judicial powers operating here.
Article 3, Section 2.
Yeah, Article 3, and particularly, Article 3, Section 1 and Section 2. Now, remember when we were over at the House of Reawakening Minds, the last week and a half, right? And when many of the questions which were presented by our brother Asar and Sister Francesca, and I would tell them, read Article 3, Section 2. And then, over these last few years, as people became conscious of the jus sanguinis situation that has been suppressed, but not necessarily publicly taught with the nationality card, people would have a vague idea, or you'd see them having difficulty trying to analyze for themselves the seriousness and the importance of the nationality card, how it actually functions. So when someone has a nationality card and they're not well schooled in the jus sanguinis nature of the nationality card to counter the bottomry instruments, that is driver's license, marriage certificates, birth certificates created, which are jus sanguinis instruments created by the colonial operatives here, but have been held as having the superior power. And logically, through that instrumentality is the contract system that they say that people have lost their rights through contract. If you get the point. And the people don't know, not knowing contract law, not knowing civics in general, have been using those instrumentalities to verify or as verification for veracity of their physical existence on the land and right of travel, or what's called privilege of travel on the land, distinguished from right of travel, and making them subject to the United States Corporation Company in violation of Constitution and treaty at the same time. And this is, again, where it confuses some people as to why, what is the reasoning behind the hybrid Europeans operating the municipalities and the state governments, etc., and the federal governments consistently violating the Constitution. So you can see, because the Constitution for the United States is an international venue, it's necessary for them to suppress it in order to have the artificiality of the jus soli to, by force of color of operations, to be superior to just sanguinis. And if one didn't know the distinction, it would, it would pass over, innocently or casually, and people would not recognize the seriousness of it. And so this is where you go into the analysis of the theft of birthright. See, and so, and of course, in different angles that we have used over the years to teach the people about nationality, uh, uh, it was be necessary for them to know that distinction. This is also why Jwali had mentioned when he set up the old Canaanite temple that every temple must, he made no exception, that every temple coming under the operations of the Moorish Divine and National Movement must, not maybe, must have a school. And this is also why many, after Hoover and others through their COINTELPRO operations infiltrated to disrupt the operations, um, uh, had many of the people who were in leadership position compromised and who were beginning to counter the intended operations of the old Canaanite temple, which forced Jwali to make changes. Like you'll see the article where he writes about forced to make changes. And then you'll see in 28 where he adopted a religious affidavit in order to counter the operations. This is where Franklin Delano Roosevelt, when the corporation went bankrupt, and of course you already know during that same time, just before then, in the 2028 area, when Jwali went to the meeting in Havana, Cuba, and the Queen of England, in authoritatively in the operations of the international venue, acknowledged mandate to Noble Jwali a right of claim of the land. And this is again that whole area, that fine line between the jus sanguinis position and the jus soli position, has been at the heart of the attack on people who understand jurisprudence and government and right of claim and reversion of a state, have always consistently made a lot of confusion and have promoted the schisms that you see existing among the Aboriginal people, even to this day.
So do you want me to share that Article 3, Section 2?
Yes, read it. Yes.
So, okay, let me get back up. Wait.
Article 3, Section 2, Section 1 and 2 of the Constitution for the United States.
Okay. All right. It's
read it very clear so they can.
Okay, I got Clause 1. Let me see.
The judicial powers.
The judicial Clause 1, cases of controversies. The judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution, the laws of the United States, and treaties made or which shall be made under their authority, to all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers, and consuls, to all cases of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction, to controversies to which the United States shall be a party, to controversies between two or more states, between a state and citizens of another state, between citizens of different states, between citizens of the same state claiming lands under grants of different states, and between a state or the citizens thereof and foreign states, citizens or subjects.
So what do you see there? You can see foreign being brought into bear, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that means when people think it only applies to the hybrid European here, you can see their concept would be wrong. You see? So the controversy, so that would be any entity or any of the states or the several states that are part of the union, political union of the United States Republic, which is all that they can have by law to be a part, etc., as regulated Article 4, Section 4. Therefore, that every state and therefore every subdivision of the states must have a republican form of government. And so once you see that, you can see why, from a political perspective, and unbeknownst to people who don't know civics, why the hybrid Europeans have been promoting their U.S. democracy. As you can see, it's unlawful. You see, but like if you don't bring that to the attention of the people because they've been trained in that for generations, they take it that that is the proper or lawful venue of operations on the land, and it clearly is not. As you'll notice, it's telling you what the judicial powers are, and yet you'll see people, even intelligent people, will argue with people who understand civics, talking about the U.S. democracy as being the legitimate government operating here.
I was speaking with, I want to say it was maybe Sister Shaface. I want to give credit where credit is due, and she was talking about a young man. I don't know, maybe like 12 or 13 years old, and they were doing the Pledge of Allegiance. She said, "Do you remember? Do you all do the Pledge of Allegiance?" And she said that they were reciting it together, word for word, until they got into. She said the republic, and he said the democracy. So this young man, which means that there has probably been a change.
They're grooming them.
Right. So they were saying everything almost word for word until they got to the republic. She said republic, he said democracy. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which is what he knew. Yeah. As what.
And this is back to what under the category of the social engineering that they call politically correct. You know, it is not unlike the animal husbandry grooming, where they will, by consistently projecting an idea, whereas the people would be groomed to it, and they would contradict even what you call critical thinking or common sense, right? Mm-hmm. Now, read Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution for the United States.
Okay, I gotta get that.
And I'll show you the point that I'm making to you. And you notice that when we were discussing over there, I told them what? Read Article 3, right? Read Article 4, Section 4, and Article 6. And those are the protective articles that protect the Aboriginal people. That's how it relates to us. Because we're part and parcel to the land. So parcel is what? The land or right of blood, you see? Mm-hmm. And this is why you see many people who really understand the corruption of the infiltration. You'll see them arguing the issue of parcel, which is original in the documentation for the constitutional bylaws, and partial, which is attitude, both being legal phrases or law phrases. Part and parcel, law phrase; part and partial, legal phrase. That you see the controversy that's there. And so parcel would deal with the right of claim under jus soli. Partial would be under, part and parcel would be jus sanguinis, and partial would be under jus soli. And so when you're aware of that fine line, you will always make those distinctions whenever you're looking at any instrumentality or someone who's going historically into the congressional archives or congressional records or into contract law and analyzing its application to the people or to the corporation. Just like you make the distinction between person, the living, sentient man or woman and person to corporation, and you already know that because people aren't taught civics, that most people, even with what they would call degree educations, uh, you'll find that only a handful of people are aware that person means corporation. You know what I mean? But yet, at the same time, not knowing the importance of being aware of that. But go ahead, read Article 4, Section 4.
Let's go back to it now. All right. It says, Article 4, Section 4, the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion and on application of the legislature or of the executive when the legislature cannot be convened against domestic violence.
All right. Now, that's very simple, very straightforward, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Did it say except one state or except some other state? Did it exclude any state in the union?
No.
Now, read it again.
The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government.
Stop right there. At what point did you see democracy anywhere in there?
But no.
So every form of government of every state in the union, known as the United States Republic, must have a republican form of government. That's the law of the land, isn't it?
Apparently, yes.
Is that left to be interpreted as saying anything else?
No.
Now, yet, and in our earlier
distinct from the Republican Party.
Exactly. Has nothing to do with the parties of the Whigamores. With that meeting in 1854 at Philadelphia. Now, keep in mind, they had that meeting there. Then they moved. You'll see the plaque that's actually in the pavement across from Independence Hall, where they tell you when they moved the government to District of Columbia, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
But by law, the Republic is still Philadelphia, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So those who know that, don't they? However, the political operations of Rome on the land was limited to 10 square miles, wasn't it? Even to this day, isn't it?
District of Columbia.
They have their own private police force up there. And people who don't understand the politics would say for years, how come the citizens of Washington, D.C. can't vote? It's because they don't understand the politics. They would be looking at it, what you would call assumed jurisdiction issue. And because the people are living or domiciling on the land, that certain rights belong to them by virtue of the Constitution. They're outside of the Constitution. People and people would get into the emotional argument because they don't know just sanguinis issue and just soli, because no one talks about it. Why? Because what are we doing right now? A lot of people who are listening to this, as we're just having this casual conversation here at the House of Reawakening Minds, they will have to go over this over and over again to start clearing things up to even understand what we're talking about. They hear the words that we're talking about. But that line is a subtle line that is strongly controversial. Why? Because when the people begin to really comprehend what Noble Drew did, it goes deeper and further and more importantly than a lot of people who assume they comprehend what he did, goes far beyond that. And when the mind changes, right, the vibration changes. And when the people, the people begin to comprehend the sound, the vibration, etc., thought patterns, etc., they will make the change because they will, within their pineal gland, start or begin to activate Godding. This is again why they won't tell people that the word God is a verb transitive. See, because the energy changes on how you approach the word. Like as an example, when they talk about in the verbal culture, they'll say, first there was the word, and the word was with God,
The word was God.
and the word was God,
And
right?
it became flesh.
Now, if you analyze that, right, and then apply it to the just sanguinis issue, distinguished from just soli, you'll get a clearer understanding on like one of the quotations that are used in the Heliotech when it says the meek shall inherit the earth. When John, when it refers to the heirs or the true children of the Canaanites, etc. And it says, I hold my hand out all the day long to a hard-hearted and rebellious people who are not called by my name. When they repent from their sinful ways, I will hear from heaven and heal their land. And so land deals with a state, right? And of course, you already know the extended meaning of land, which would include hereditaments as well as rights and liberties. Now, when you read the Constitution for the United States, you'll start recognizing that that document is in its nature an allodial trust put in place to secure the allodial rights of the people. Now you understand why those who understand the reality of that document won't acknowledge the republic order established as the law of the land. Now read Article 6, and then that will bring into order Article 4, Section 4, and Article 3. And so you see that the three primal articles that need to be studied by anyone that has a nationality card would be Article 3, Article 4, Section 4, and Article 6 in its entirety. And then you would understand the political positioning of diversity and the obligations that are placed upon those who are operating on the land. And then also putting in context, you'll understand even better the motu proprio that Pope Francis did in 2013, and you'll understand more succinctly how to analyze the civil orders issued directly to Barack H. Obama via the Pope through his assistant attorney, Anna von Rees, in service to the Pope relative to their obligations to all the treaties, etc. And so when you put it in context, it actually gives you a synopsis of the history, a promise with the motu proprio that they would end or they would stop operating under the doctrine of discovery. And so by virtue, the promise to the world through the Popes of Rome is that that the just sanguinis would be acknowledged for what it is by law, and then that the just soli claims would be what? They would be stand down, they would back up. Now we know that one of the problems that you're having, even when you look at the controversies that are presented in mainstream news, and they use these personalities, and I think a lot of times people get caught in the personalities of this controversy between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, both being presidents at the same time. Joe Biden is president of the United States Corporation Company that is bankrupt, held as bankrupt right now, which is why they can't trade, right? And then Donald Trump, who was put in place by the military operations to restore the republic, and people who don't understand the politics get caught up in how they view these people as men themselves in their personality, rather than looking at the politics behind what they're doing. And this is why you saw me 6 or so years ago when I said over the House, and I said I'm not defending Donald Trump, but I know that he was assigned, and a lot of people would twist that into saying that I'm supporting Donald Trump. That thing is not that. I understand the politics, and so when you understand that, you wouldn't get caught up or twisted in the social political arguments that are presented through the mainstream news, which are controlled by the Khazarians, to distort people's concept of what Donald Trump was really doing. If you get the point, they would misrepresent, and this is why there's always been, even to this day, so much of the mainstream news misrepresenting or attacking Donald Trump based on his personality, what they like about him, what they don't like about him, rather than doing an analysis of the politics that is undergirding the operations of his position, and also why you'll see even people in the Republican Party in opposition to Donald Trump. So people who don't understand would be thinking in their training concepts of what they think the Republican Party is, as you said earlier, and the Democratic Party. In reality, the true politics has nothing to do with either one of them in the sense of them being at all held as legitimate. But it is the Republic or supreme law of the land that's at stake. So read Article 6. Article 6 of the Constitution for the United States, operating on the land, judicial civil powers on the land at North America.
Okay. Article 6. All debts contracted and engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be as valid against the United States under this Constitution as under the Confederation. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary, notwithstanding. The senators and representatives before mentioned, and the members of the several state legislatures, and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution, but no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States.
So you can see those offices are actually public trust. And you see that they're held clearly to what? Constitution, Articles of Confederation, and the treaties together comprises the supreme law of the land. And then look how, as you talked about earlier, has been practiced bluntly in the people's faces, where they're saying they're pledging to the democracy.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, when you understand the law, you understand traitors. And this, I think, a lot of times because people don't know the distinction between de jure and de facto, de jure and colored, if you get the point, the republic and the democracy, i.e. the natural sentient man and woman and the corporate 14th Amendment person, both held as persons, and not having the capacity to analyze instruments when they're reading instruments, and why many of the questions, as we were talking actually last week, why a lot of people, you're telling these things and they still don't get it because they don't have that subtle consciousness to make the discernment to separate the wheat from the chaff of understanding sanguinis from soli. But yet in the classification of civil operations, you have one level where their rights usually referred to as unalienable, which means no lien can be put on that. that would be in the sanguinis, right? And then you have where there can be liens or licenses, that would be soli. And so you can see where the corrupt politicians who have been misclassifying the original people of the land with their caste systems of Negro, black, colored type thing, and then classifying them falsely as U.S. citizens, and then have not only used color of law under jus soli to actually genocide and steal their land and gentrify their communities, but also tax them unlawfully, when the deal of it is totally unlawful because the tax doesn't apply to indigenous people at all, because they're not. In other words, the fact of the matter is all the taxes that they have ever collected. Now, let's make this very, 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 very clear what our people need to know. Every penny of tax that was ever extracted from people with the copper complexion skin, the Americans, the true Americans, i.e., the right of blood, soli, was unlawfully and criminally extracted.
Isn't that
Every penny?
Is that
on
sanguinis
any
instead
level.
of soli? Isn't that
Pardon me, just sanguinis.
just sanguinis? Okay.
Now, by those who were just soli. I apologize. Let me make this clear. All of the people with hair like lamb's wool, skin like burnished brass, also referred to as the copper complexion people, the true Americans, have right of blood, are not taxed. This is where, when we have over the years and taught people. Now, remember, you read Article 6, right?
Mm-hmm.
You read Article 6, and so when you read Article 6, it doesn't conflict with you when you know, and we have said to you over the years, lesson book 14 and 14A.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you understand Article 6 and you understand Article 3, then you understand AA 222141. So AA, and logically, people, some who did not understand it, right, or some people who were knowingly a beneficiary of people held to servitude, but pretend that they don't, right? Would you see them with what is tactus, right? And pretend that this was something that I made up type thing over the years, which you're aware of, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now when you read Article 6, right, it tells you what? All debts and contracts entered into
before the adoption.
What are keys? The word before, and then it's what? Against the United States. It didn't say for, did it?
No, it said before the adoption of this.
So that makes them subject to it, doesn't it?
It should.
No.
It does.
That's the supreme law of the land.
Yeah, it does.
All right. Now let's look at this, right? Now let's look at this. Now consider the supreme law of the land. You read it for yourself, right?
All right.
Now, so let's go to United States Code of Law of a general and permanent character, right? So that's a general and permanent character, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I would have you read this because it will be absorbed by you, and you can put footnote if you choose to in relationship to it. Read from the top of the page on.
The Code of the Laws of the United States of America of a general and permanent character.
So general and permanent. So if it's general, that covers a broad spectrum, don't it?
Yes.
Permanent means there's no exception, don't it?
Right.
So that means when something changes or some politician start getting his idea or her idea about some different party or what occurred between Lincoln and say Bush now, like it changed. It don't change, does it?
Yeah.
All right, read it out.
The whole thing. Okay. The Code of the Laws of the United States of America of a general and permanent character enforced January 3rd, 1935, 1934 edition. Consolidated, codified, set forth, and published in 1935 in the 159th year of the Republic.
Did it say democracy?
No, of the Republic,
Okay.
with ancillaries and index. Note, treatise and commentary by Brother Taj Tarik Bey. Moore's ordered round table for instructional purposes only. Charles Mosley Bey, PhD, LLD, a 33rd 360-degree Master Mason, Free Moorish Master Astrologer, and Moorish Constitution Lawgiver. I, Sonomi, has copyright and certificates registered in the United States Department of Justice under Truth A1 Library of Congress Copyright Office, which reveal at law the conditions of intercourse between the indigenous Moors and the occupational European nations with whom the Moors have treaties.
Now that's Article 6, isn't it?
Yeah.
Keep read on.
This affirms the pre-existing status of the Moors in all matters of interchange, commerce, and law with the European side of the nation. The specific copyright certificate of note, Clock of Destiny, Moorish American Nationality Card of Identification with Zodiac Constitution, has registration number AA222141, Class A. This number refers to the Code of the Laws of the United States of America, of a general and permanent character in force January 3rd, 1935, 1934 edition. Title 22, Chapter 2, Section 141. Title 22, Foreign Relations and Intercourse, page 954. Chapter 2, Consular Courts, Section 141. Judicial authority generally to carry into full effect the provisions of the treaties of the United States with certain foreign countries. Title 22, Foreign Relations and Intercourse, page 954. Chapter 2, Consular Courts, Section 141. Section 141, Judicial authority generally to carry into full effect the provisions of the treaties of the United States with certain foreign countries, the ministers and consuls of the United States in China, Siam, Turkey, Morocco, Muscat, Abyssinia, Persia, and the territories formerly a part of the former Ottoman Empire, including Egypt, duly appointed to reside therein, shall, in addition to other powers and duties imposed upon them, respectively by the provisions of such treaties, respectively be invested with judicial authority described in this chapter, which shall appertain to the office of minister and consul, and be part of the duties belonging thereto, wherein and so far as the same is allowed by treaty, and in accordance with the usages of the countries in their intercourse with the Franks or other foreign Christian nations.
So you see, Christian is a political system. People think it is a religion, don't they?
Yeah.
Those are nations. They are political venues. Now, what does that show? Does that not reaffirm Article 6? Does it not reaffirm Article 4, Section 4?
Yeah.
Does it not reaffirm Article 3 and the diversity relative to any controversy between people making claims on lands in the same states, different states, or foreign states? And foreign does not always mean what? Distance. It's jurisdiction. And it's what? They're operating on the land, including all of the territories formerly, that means in the past, a part of the Ottoman Empire, Egypt. Chapter 47. You see the correlation? Now, when you understand the politics, the history, and the law, see, because remember, you're talking right now law. You're not talking political opinion. You're not talking political party. You're talking the established law of the land. Now, what you just read there, and what you just read in the Constitution, and it said what? Any laws of any state to the contrary, notwithstanding. That means anything that they told you, if from any state, matters not. that contradicts this has no standing. However, people who don't know over the years have been arguing with us for holding the position we've held. And the venue of our communication is what? Consular, because that's the established venue for enforcing the treaties for indigenous people. And they're obligated to that. Now, when you read the letter from Pope Francis to Obama, they talk about what? All treaties in force, they're obligated to. Then he gives a synopsis of the history and said what? That they have been operating as a rogue state, which means they're de facto. Now, when you have a comprehension of the rules of the game, you can easily measure who is politically, operatively lawful and who is not. And then you can also clearly see when you see people who have been taking opposition to this position, they have exposed themselves as traitors. However, people who don't know what you just read in correlation with the Constitution don't have reference points. And when we're referencing some of the things we talk about, they take it as our opinion as opposed to their opinion, not knowing that they are out of order. It's not a matter of opinion. That's the established law of the land. So there's certain things that people can have opinions on, and there's certain things that are stare decisis. It's not left to argument, is it?
No.
It's clearly not left to argument, is it?
No.
However, people have been arguing it, haven't they? And so when you're looking at chapter 47, that's a just sanguinis right of claim. Superior, and superseding any just soli claim. Now you see why, when you really understand the politics, why a lot of people in the political arena, you won't see them necessarily publicly talking down, but they kind of avoid talking about naturalization. Or you see them distort what he said and say, oh, he's just talking religion. No, he's talking the state. You see the point? Now you understand why they don't teach civics. In other words, once you, it's sort of like this. Once you give the people the canvas of the real politics, they see by what you just read, that gives you the foundation of the rules of the game here to measure everything. And if anything contradicts this, they are what? Criminal, misprision of treason. Now you understand why many of the hybrid Europeans, particularly from the middle class who have been thrown under the bus, have been what? Supporting platforms that represent or lean towards restoring the republic. Why? Because they overthrew the republic since Lincoln to enslave us. They didn't expect it to happen to them. This is why in the last 15 years they've been making all those videos exposing the republic, or people like Anna von Rees exposing, and you can see why she was operatively assistant to the Pope of Rome. Now that the nations of the world got warrants out on all the priesthood, and they ain't been too fired up about traveling too much. And then you see when you start looking at the different wars that are taking place in the different territories, you can recognize their political nature that's not necessarily talked about in the mainstream news. Why? Because you have other eyes, because you know what's behind it that's not talked about. All right? Then you can also recognize, as we put this information out and start tearing down institutions, you can see why people were doing what? Who have other motives, start attacking consular venue. Now you know motive. It's not left to opinion, is it? It's not is it left to opinion? It isn't. It already exists. Do we need to invent the wheel?
Yeah.
What we need to do, what Drawley said. help me in my great missionary work to bring my people back into the constitutional fold of government, enforcing our Constitution for the United States of America. That's the heart of the mission of the Moorish movement, right there in the divine warning. And yet you'll see people will sit, some of them meaning well, it's because they don't have background, because they haven't been taught, who are following emotional leadership, who are compromised, are moving from an emotional perspective of what they think they see when they don't know this. Now, as the people learn the truth of the politics, the foundation, they will do what? Start getting their house in order. But until the people themselves want the house in order, you can't make it be in order, because the people are the sovereign. The republic is the people. This is why they've trained the people to keep looking for leader guys and people to represent them rather than to present themselves. But you can't present yourself if you're not in your proper person. This is why they interjected the nom de guerres. And so when the people start talking about rights and liberties, and then they claim to be black, Negro, melanated people, anything but who they are, they have no right of claim, because they're not just Soleil. They don't have right of blood. There's no such people.
Or United States citizens.
There you go. This is why they promoted the U.S. citizen paradigm, and yet there's no instrumentality whatsoever existing anywhere on the planet as a U.S. national identity card. Doesn't exist. Never did. And yet it is held as if it's obviously in existence. It doesn't even exist. And yet people will argue it as the standard of political validity and veracity in political operations, and even set up organizations for people to be United States citizens without teaching them the Naturalization Act, which would be the venue for vetting someone who would get such a card that never existed. So as you begin to examine, you can see the fraud unravels. It covers itself out. It brings itself out. And then you begin to recognize why they were upset when a direct heir, right of blood of the Moorish tribes of the Maghreb established a venue for what? For these issues to be restored. He didn't invent them. And if you read the Quran, he says what? This information has been held back, right? He said, look, I'll show you. They come on, this is in the back, the divine instructions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you know that that he tells you the heavens has not been told, so that you go and analyze it, right? And he referenced that these lessons have been held back from people, didn't he? Mm-hmm. And for the first time, they were delivered to the Muslims of North America, right? Say the fallen sons and daughters of the Asiatic nation of North America need to learn to love instead of hate, and to know of their higher self and lower self. This is the uniting of the Holy Quran of Mecca for the teaching and instructing of all Moorish Americans, etc. Right? So these lessons have been held back by the Muslims of India, Africa, etc. And said for the first time in ages it was delivered into the hands of the Muslims of North America. Right? And so these are ancient principles. Now, when you read Article 6, right, it says all contracts, debts and contracts entered into before the adoption of the Constitution. So now, when you look into the archives and you look into the history, you see the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, 1786, 1787, superseded 1836, supersede the territorial operations of 1787, 1788, and then you see the late signing or adoption for the Constitution, 88, 89. So you see that sequence, 86, 87, 88, 89, that 4-year cycle. So you can see the treaty supersede the Constitution. Now you recognize why they're held to it. Article 6. You see Article 6 now? And so you can see they're obligated. And this is, again, why when people go into of these venues, of these non-Article 3 venues that have been unlawfully referred to as courts, and they've been robbing the people, that when the people come in and argue or present the Constitution, you'll see some of those administrative clerks will tell the people, don't bring that Constitution in here. They just told you that they're traitors. But yet they have to take an oath on that to even take that office, don't they? Don't they? Then the people come and call them my honor. And so now you just made a trust agreement and made him what? Fofer for your estate in an oral trust. So if you don't teach people civics, they don't know that they're giving jurisdiction to criminals. So you see the problem that they're having with the masses of people not being taught civics. They don't know that these people are organized criminals right in their faces. And that you'll see them get frustrated and say, we got to have a meeting. We haven't got a discussion because they're gentrifying our neighborhood. And they, Wilmington has become Kilmington, and they don't do this and they do that and they don't do that. And Philadelphia has become, Philadelphia and things like that. And all these decisions are made by people who they think are their government, and they don't know that these are all members of the Roman Curia and that they have taken over the Republic. Then once you understand that, you understand the manumission operations during the 1860 to 1865, and why they've been, the people have been tricked into thinking that the manumission meant that these people were being, that the Aboriginal people who were enslaved were being liberated, and they really weren't. Their estates were transferred to the Congress, who are the board of directors for the Roman Curia and operated from Fleet Street, England. And although we've been telling people that for years, if they don't know the background, they don't see the correlation, they don't see the connection. And this is how they've hidden. How do you say they hide it in plain sight? So once you understand these things, it gives you reference points, and you can do cross-reference and start seeing the connection. Now you understand, once you see this, why all of your major holders on all of your board of directors on all your major corporate entities, you'll see a continuation of the same names, the same persons. Whether you're dealing with people that belong to the Rothschild organization or the Rockefeller organization or the Gates family. And then when we show the people the corporate papers, as we showed them over and over again, you understand and you comprehend their existence and why it's not taught to the public. So because the public is to be made to believe that the corporate entity and foreign operatives who have been pretending to be government since 1871 are the aggregate land heirs and sovereigns, when they're actually just soli under de facto, just soli under de facto operations, under the democracy, distinguished from just sanguinis, protected by treaty under just sanguinis on Constitution, Article 3, Article 4, Section 4, Article 6, law of the land, supreme law of the land. And anything they've been telling these people in any of these states that contradict that has no standing whatsoever. Clearly, it doesn't even need interpretation. It's just that the people have not been taught. And so therefore, when you're trying to encourage people to take their proper places among the affairs of men, they lean to whatever they're hearing in mainstream news or whatever opinion someone has who doesn't like you necessarily, if you get the point. And then other people that have other agendas, right, or who are subject to that misinformation, those are the people that the hybrids will use. Like, say, they'll approach somebody that looks like you and me and have them make videos to troll what we're saying. And the people who don't know what you just read, right? Mm-hmm. They're familiar with that Constitution, right? But they're not necessarily familiar what's in that Constitution.
What's in it, yeah.
And what you just read in lesson 14. And so they're not aware that these people are obligated. They think that, you know, if me and you are sitting up here talking about our communication with them that's only supposed to be through treaty, they're not even supposed to be talking to you. They have no business even having a conversation with you. Where they come tell you, you can't paint your window unless we say so. And you say, oh, I can't fix my window because they're going to get me. They don't have any, they don't have nothing to say to you. They only because you've given up your right, not knowing your right. You see the point? Now, once you understand the conversations I'm having with you, like when I built, you know, teddy bear daycare for my cousin Pearl, right? And city inspectors came there. As a matter of fact, the Medio family, because they were not only they had supply house on Federal Street, because they controlled the politics, right? The city inspector was one of the Medios, came there. Where's your permits? You can't do this, you can't do that. Same thing when I did the community center in Buena Vista. That's how I beat them in court, with the law. Although they punished me in order to intimidate others, if you get the whole point, I took the beating because someone has to take the stand, if you get the point. But that I beat them, you know, but once you understand what you just read, that's what beat them. And all the blocks that I got when I built that daycare center, no tax. When I bought them blocks, when I did Rogers Place, no tax. And they were pissed as hell. And so you can see their resistance. If the people begin to understand their rights, you can see how much finances they'll lose overnight. And they're just robbing our people every day. And this is why you'll see them attack any Moors who do what? Enforce that Constitution. Now you understand why Lamont Maurice Hill is a political prisoner?
Because it's
absolutely. Absolutely. But yet you'll see people of our own people will act like he's a felon. See what the problem is? However, the nations of the world are not buying their treasury bonds anymore. And it's only a matter of time that these institutions will collapse because that's what supports the stock market. Then when you read the motu proprio, and then you read the civil orders from Pope Francis to Obama, and you put this all together, the picture is clear for the dumbest dummy to see. This is another reason why people who have vested in the system are upset that we patiently and redundantly over and over again are, purging the people's minds of the brainwashing that they have so that they can get a clearer picture because the people don't know the politics. Now, look, we've been like family talking about these issues for what, 12 years now, right? Right. And what you just read is not something that I have not mentioned before. However, when you read it for yourself, there's a different level of comprehension than me just telling you,
Absolutely.
because it becomes your information. But you recognize, even though I've written the commentary, right? I give you the law directly from the law books, right? And I just support it with footnote in order for you to comprehend, because usually when the hybrid will tell you, he will always interject himself as the authority, and you can see that they're really not the authority. For these laws are what? Against them. These obligations are against them. These debts and contracts are against the United States. They're subordinate to you. But if you don't know who you are, that you're just sanguinis, and you can't make the distinction that you're just sanguinis in this political arena, and they're just soli, they let you trick you into thinking that you're a U.S. citizen, which makes you a part of their game, of their stock. You don't belong there. Now you understand the rule of diversity. And please, those of you who are listening, to have a clearer comprehension, look up diversity of nationality. Then read Article 3, Section 2. And then read Article 4, Section 4, and then read Article 6. And then you'll understand and comprehend the nationality card is an instrument of diversity. And, like when Drali said to the Moors for decades, he would say to the Moors, he said, the day will come when your nationality card will change in your pocket. What he's really saying is that your comprehension of what that instrument actually is will change, because you will change. And when you change and see the power that it really holds in its just sanguinis right of claim of a state, distinguished from, see, because our people have been looking at everything from a just soli position that they were falsely held in. But they don't know that they're falsely held in a just soli position, because the political legislation of color only sits in that arena. It can't rise to just sanguinis. They have no right to. And it can't contradict it. So they don't teach it, so the people can't make discernment. See, this is the key. They don't teach it, so people never make the discernment. So they settle that they are just soli. Even though they're not taught just soli, the whole venue of legislation is in a just soli venue. But yet, now, and then look at this. As it has become politically detrimental to them, they want to try to make the just sanguinis argument with that fence at that border of Mexico against other Americans, because it threatens their power, but they have no standing to make a just soli argument. I mean, just sanguinis argument, because it can only be just soli. And so they're fighting amongst each other, because the deal of it is they keep on arguing the issue that Mexicans have no right to America. They're Americans, and the hybrid European is soli. They're not Americans. Now you understand the just soli, the issue with this, and why this is not promoted in modern dictionaries. And then people reading that paragraph don't see just soli, just sanguinis, just soli. They don't even see to make that distinction. But those who know jurisprudence and history and constitution law sees it easily. However, now, when you go back into the old Canaanite temple, and this is another example. Let me show you. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
All right. Now, on the back of this authority, right, of the questionnaire, Drali, right? And look at this. Our authority Copybook 521, page 579. State of Illinois, Cook County, right? Subsection number 10105905, filed for the record. Form number 1099, corporation, religious. Affidavit of organization, State of Illinois, County of Cook. 1928. 1928. Keep that date in mind. August the 1st, August 1 p.m. 2:52, and recorded in book page I, Noble Drawley, page recorder, Psalmist Jesconowicz, right? Moorish Temple of Science, held at Chicago in the County of Cook and the State of Illinois on the 20th day of July, AD 1928. For that purpose, the following persons were appointed sheiks according to the rules and usages of such Moorish Temple of Science, to solemnly swear that at a meeting of the members of the Noble Drawley, Millie Eel, Small Bay, Lovett Bay, and Foreman Bay, the Moorish Science Temple of America, deriving its power and authority from the great Quran of Muhammad to propagate the faith and extend the learning and truth of the great prophet of Ali in America, to appoint and consecrate missionaries of the prophet, and to establish the faith of Muhammad in America. And said Moorish Temple of Science adopted as its corporate name the following Moorish Science Temple of America. And at said meeting, this affidavit acted as presiding officer, subscribed and sworn to before me, 20th day, July, AD 1928. Drawley, Roberta W. Consul, Notary Public. See Herd's Revised Statute, Chapter 32, 36, or appointed or wardens and vestrymen, or whatever name they may adopt. And so you can see the Moorish Science Temple name was adopted in 1928, not 1913. Before that, so that's 1928, right? So now what did that do? It started protecting the Moorish properties, those who get their homes and their lands, etc., who have right of claim under jus sanguinis from the operations of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, because that's when he started they did what they call the bank holiday, and they were claiming people's lands and their mortgages and their estates, etc., and making their derivatives called the so-called bank holiday. So they went bankrupt in 1928, and they started using the birth certificates, because the nations were no longer accepting the marriage certificates, which were used before and fractionalized as stock to back the United States corporation government debt. This is what's represented in the arguments with the motu proprio and the letter from Pope Francis to Obama. That's why I tell people to examine it, to break it down. They're literally telling you the history. They're telling you the politics. And this is, again, over the years, why it's been so controversial with some people who are upset with me for publishing the letter from Drawley during that period of time when the temple was infiltrated. And he commanded that letter to be read before every meeting, and which is why that letter is not read by many people in the temple, because it exposes the COINTELPRO operations. Well, but anyway, the major point that I'm making to you is this. Moors with a nationality card, and even those that don't have a nationality card but know who they really are, like a lot of people are finding out, like Ye and others, and are speaking up, they have right of claim Just sanguinis, distinguished from just soli, which is being dismantled in its corporate operations, which is causing the trade wars that are going on right now. And you see in the Quran, we talk about the uniting of Asia. So you see, now you understand the Silk Road, etc., what's going on in China, Russia, and Africa, and in South America now, and the controversy between them and the United States Corporation Company, with the U.S. Corporation Company operatives and what they call the the Congressional Military Industrial Complex, starting these wars all around the world, trying to maintain their power, because the bottomry instruments are no longer accepted in trade. And so the stock market has to fall. It has no choice. And so while they have falsely claimed the just sanguinis beings falsely as U.S. citizens and then been taxing them, the rest of the Asiatic world is indirectly coming to our aid by stopping the trade. And logically, before things can be fixed, it has to fall apart. And this is why, if you really understand both the prophetic projections and the politics, why those who are wise will simplify their lives, knowing that if you don't do it willingly, it's going to be done against you anyway. So the less burden that you have, you can survive this transitional period which is taking place now. If you vest yourself in large instrumentalities and operations, it will injure you and you're going to lose it anyway. You're going to be underwater. However, in the future, as these things are repaired, your estates will be returned to you with no encumbrance, etc. This is what's referred to in the civil orders. However, it's over. Anyway, have a grand evening.
Listen, thank you, Grand Sheik, for that great commentary. Before we go, y'all, before you leave, don't go. Got an announcement to make. I put a link up, and somebody was complaining about the noise. I do apologize, but I put a link up because I want you all to know that we are going to be celebrating Grand Sheik Taj Tarik Bey 77th solar return on our other channel, which is the one that's not on YouTube or Facebook. I gave you a login link in the description. Please grab that. It's in the comments. I think I put it in twice because the first time I think it broke up. So I gave you the link for Tuesday, February 14th, which is Grand Sheik's actual solar return. In the meantime, if you would like to, send a love gift or token or donation of your appreciation, it's our Cash App and our PayPal, and also in the description that you'll find with the link, you'll also find if you wanted to send money orders, which we're kind of moving towards so we can get away from Cash App and PayPal. But nevertheless, if you want to send a money order, we have information about how to do that. That's Tuesday, February 14th at 8 p.m. And, we'll have music and guests and all of that, and probably going to even allow some of you all to come on and give him the greetings during the live. The next thing I want to let you know before you go, that next Friday, which is, I believe, the 10th, we're going to have our first, if you were on Tuesday with Rod Hayes, we talked about him doing a training. He's doing a Q&A and a training on restoring or building tribal government. It's not going to be on YouTube. It's not going to be on Facebook. There will be a link that'll be made available this week coming up so that you can register for that class with him. So that's going to be the 10th at 7:30, 2-hour, that's workshop number 1, an unfiltered workshop on building or creating tribal government. He's going to answer questions and he's going to do some teaching on next Friday, and you will want to register for that one. With that, we thank you so very much for, as always, for being with us tonight. Please share If you have not, please like and share this video and also subscribe to our channel. We have some other, I'll be back on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, which is what is Tuesday, Grand Sheik? Whatever Tuesday is, I will be on with a special guest, actress, writer. We're going to, sometimes I do other stuff on Office Hours with Dr. G. So please tune in. You're going to want to hear, I'm pretty sure, she's a wonderful, wonderful guest, and I'm looking forward to Tuesday. So please tune in at 8 p.m. on this coming Tuesday. And as I said, on the Friday, Brother Rod Hayes will be back with one of those specials. It will not be on Facebook. It will not be on YouTube. So you're going to want to get the link and register for that, and it will be made available this week. Also, we send condolences out to our brother Rod, who sister transitioned on yesterday. So we, for those of you who know are his Facebook friends and so forth, make sure that he gets your condolences. With that, we want to thank you so much for tuning in. And Grand Sheik, I think, let me just put this link up again for folks in case they, so they'll see this.
Yeah.
We're going to close out with the link, and we thank you so very much. We'll see you on Tuesday and see you on Friday.
The deeper and deeper I go, I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening mine. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening mine.